Welcome back, listeners, to a brand new episode of The New Standard. And you're checking out a new program called Who's Arthur Smith? And we have a special guest that we want to bring on. Matt Steele of SteelCityInsider.com is going to break down just who is Arthur Smith, largely from the perspective of his football. What are we getting? What are the Steelers getting when they talk about Arthur Smith? Let me bring Matt in. Hey, Matt, welcome to the program, sir.
Lance, how you doing? Good to
It
have.
is
Good to be here, man.
awesome.
Good.
It's awesome. Thank to have you. Thank you for hopping on the program with us and jumping into this. Before we jump into it, please give the listeners just your football background.
Okay. I'm gonna give them a little bit of a Steeler background, and I live in the Detroit area, and ever since I can remember, literally my fourth birthday, I had a Steeler shirt on. So this has
Good,
been
good, good for you.
it's been a fandom since I can remember, like literally, right? So, and I grew up baseball, basketball, football. I played baseball in college. Football was my first love affair, though. When I was graduating high school, I wasn't big enough to move on into that sport, so I chose baseball. And I'm a student of the game, right? So, and plus, I've been teaching and coaching, and I've coached football, junior high, high school level. Talk to coaches all the time on those levels, and I just love the game. So, and I've always been watching it from a perspective of like, what's the best way to do it? And how can my Steelers win a Super Bowl? What are championship teams doing that my Steelers are not doing? And then you evolve your identity in terms of like how you want to see the game played. And so that, just in a nutshell, if I can just not get too far off the rails and talking about it, is what I do. But as a coach, teaching and coaching and training athletes is what I've been doing since my early 20s. It's just coaching is what I do. It's my profession. So I mix it in with the football knowledge, right?
And you look 23, so
And I'm
I'm a,
48, man. I was
I'm a,
running sprints this morning. I got in that cold tub this morning. I teach health, man. So like, and I'll show you at some point, somebody like, because I can still move. That's my passion, right? It's like athletic movement and teaching it and sort of living it. It's quite a journey and a level of knowledge that I've acquired in doing this stuff. So
That's awesome. Thank you for that. And uh, I have some friends that are Detroit Lion fans who I have still not talked to after the defeat to the 49ers. I'm
yeah,
giving them time
as you
to
should.
kind of, yes, I mean, I normally I would have called and would have made a bunch of jokes, but
Yeah.
it,
Well, hey, I never knew I had a little bit of Lions in me. I have every Detroit sport. I'm a University of Michigan fan. Don't tell my father-in-law, but I used to sort of root for Michigan State too because I wanted to see the state do well. They were my second team when I was a kid. But like, I'm watching the Lions and I want them to win. I got the dads around me and I want to see them have the joy that I've experienced with the Steelers. And watching that thing just, Dan Campbell being allergic to kicking a field goal and not knowing how to manage the clock. I know what 108-1 looks like from Bill Cowher. And damn it, feed David Montgomery the ball. And they're not stopping them, and you're just stopping yourselves. And it was frustrating. I was frustrated the next day, but I was also happy I wasn't a Lions fan truly, because I don't know how I could get over that one. They
let
just
me just
handed it.
let me just say this. My wife is from San Francisco.
Okay.
And so it's happy wife, happy life.
Yeah.
She was very nervous at halftime, quite upset. I kind of just ran to a different part of the house. But I am happy that her 49ers are going to the Super Bowl. But let's switch real quick.
Yeah.
What
Yeah.
was your thought on the hire? And was Arthur Smith your first choice? If not, who was your first choice?
He was my second choice to Clint Kubiak, but I tell you what, after reconsidering, he would be my first choice. The reason why I had him a little bit down, I was concerned about the Atlanta stuff. I didn't like the pistol stuff, too much shotgun out of first and second down, but they didn't have the quarterbacks, and maybe Ritter couldn't get under center. I don't know, but you take me back to 2020, and he was my number one. because that is the style of football that I've been writing about and preaching for 10 years, trying to put that word out there that let's get back to Steeler football and let's support the quarterback and let's build from the trenches and let's get downhill, run play action off of it. The Steelers have not been able to get the free. And if your wife's a 49ers fan, she knows, man, there's guys running wide open yards after the catch from
Absolutely.
well-designed routes. And the Steelers have not had that forever. And so Arthur Smith provides that. We got to make it easier on the quarterback. And, I just think too, I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's money, TV, if it's college football, if it's the Tom Brady effect from 2007 and everybody's got to go pass happy, but there's too much pressure put on the quarterback. And I think average guys can win multiple championships if you build it around them. And for the Steelers, give me a top 5 defense, a top 3 defense, a very good offensive line, a play action game. Let's get them in the 2-minute drills. Let's have some good third down receivers that we can move the chains on third downs, and I think you can win that way.
It's interesting that you say that because just from looking at it from afar, I think a lot of franchises and fans are afraid of the moniker game manager. I
Oh,
think
absolutely.
I think that moniker of game manager and just what that is affects how a lot of fan bases and ownership groups uh, look at the quarterback position and
Mm-hmm.
look at scheme and how scheme should help a quarterback. But let me ask you this, just as
Mm-hmm.
a frame of reference,
Mm-hmm.
because a lot of fans, when they look at offenses, they'll go Shanahan tree, they'll go Reed tree, so on and so forth. How would you describe Arthur Smith's offense? Use an adjective to describe it when you think of it, and kind of where does he fit from a philosophical standpoint if a fan were to think of a tree?
Matt LaFleur wanted to take him. He was in Tennessee, wanted to take him to Green Bay. I think there's a strong connection to that Shanahan, tree there, Kubiak, however you want to call it. And I think Jim Wexel brought up this point about Mike Mularkey. I think said it, and if it's true, and Mularkey said that, it's best, exotic smash mouth, and that's what I want. That's what we
Oh,
want.
that's
We
a
want
great.
to be able to run, yeah, run the ball downhill, and then move that line of scrimmage, and then run that exotic play action game off of it, where you're getting the yards after the catch, the wide open receivers, making it easier on the quarterback, but you're doing the crossing routes and then the vertical routes where they catch it on the move. In the last 10, 15 years, how many times do we see the Steelers receivers catch the ball in a standstill with their back turned to the end zone? They're not catching the ball on the move. It just was never well designed. It put all the pressure on the quarterback. And so, I'm thinking, modern day smash mouth, exotic smash mouth, however you want to call it. And I think it is better in this sense than, let's say, the LaFleur, McVay, Shanahan, because I'd rather have 2 tight ends. It's Pittsburgh. It's cold weather. So if 2 tight ends and 21 personnel is going to get back into the equation along with 3 wide receivers, I'm all for it. Because you look at the splits for Arthur Smith, he was kind of like, 20%, just over 20% with 21 personnel, maybe like 30% with 3 wide receivers and 25-30 with, so it was a nice mix of 11, 12, and 21. And that's balance.
Let me
I
ask
like
you
that.
this before we get into the specifics of that. Do you think Connor Hayward could be the use check, or if they went to 13 personnel, could he be that type of guy? Because I know that in looking a little bit at Arthur Smith, they ran some 13 as well. Could
Yeah.
he be a guy that could fit? Or do you think when you look at their tight end room, that room is good enough to kind of play in his scheme?
I think he needs to move the fullback. Now, fullback is used a little bit differently, more as an H, but you see use check, and he's used more closer to the line of scrimmage a lot, and they'll call it 21 personnel. Uh, and he did a pretty good job. Hayward did a blocking last year, but I would like to see him in the backfield more lined up as a traditional or maybe offset eye fullback. Now he need to put a little bit more size on. I think what we want that big line up front, and I think what is missing is that 6'3", 250-pound H back type player. Pruitt, is it? I forgot his first name. He's followed Smith around from Tennessee. He was in Atlanta. He's kind of an H back he's a free agent that might come on a veteran minimum. But I'm kind of looking at, and I don't know if it fits the equation of Jonnu Smith going to get released more than likely by Atlanta. And now you have a weapon there. And now you have three really good tight ends in versatile roles. Because I'm not sure yet what Washington gives you in the
In the
passing
passing
game.
game. Yeah.
He runs 4.6, and I would like to see him run down the seam on a vertical. And I think if you run some delayed screens and get him in an open space and get his big body moving, he can do some nice things for you. But it just gives you another dimension if they're able to add a guy like Smith. Smith didn't have a lot of success in New England, and I'm not sure he's going to have success somewhere else. And maybe he wants to follow Smith. I don't know. It seems sort of unlikely, and Pruitt might be more of an answer. But to go back to your original, I think they need a little bit more size there as they're pushing that line of scrimmage. And that's
Let me
just, yeah.
let me give you some numbers here. Let me give you some numbers
Mhm.
because you mentioned Tennessee, and when I looked at Arthur Smith, I'm focusing, and I was listening to you when you were talking about coaching to introduce yourself, and from my brief stint, I coached varsity sports for about 3 seasons, and I recognized very early that there's a difference between being a coordinator or a position coach and a head coach. And so I'm looking at some of his performance more so in 2019 and 2020 when I look at Arthur Smith. Let me give you a couple of numbers from 2020
Yeah.
because they were outstanding. They averaged 29.6. Their offensive DVOA was ranked fifth.
Mm-hmm.
Their run DVOA was fifth.
Mm-hmm.
Their yards, if I'm looking here, yards per attempt was 7.1. They averaged 5 yards a carry, ran it about
Mm-hmm.
51% of the time. High success rate in terms of
Right.
their offense at 51%, which was first. Dropback EPA was third. Dropback
Yep.
success rate EPA was third. When you look at those numbers, and of course in Tennessee, they had Tannehill and they had Chris Henry. They
Right.
had King Henry. Could you see some of, first of all, does the personnel match? Do you think it matches what they want to do? Do you think we'll see a similar type approach in Pittsburgh? Could you see Pittsburgh's offense ever being good enough under Smith to hit these type of numbers?
That's going to depend on Kenny Pickett, but Tannehill was pretty average, run of the mill until he got in that system, and then he had a 117.5 rating and a 106.5 in 19 and 2020. And I'm saying let's get Kenny to 100 passer rating somehow, and I think the system allows him to do that. Najee Harris fits perfect for what they were doing with Derrick Henry. Now, if you look at Derrick Henry's first 3 years, they were pretty ordinary. And then he got Arthur Smith, and then he took off 1,500 yards, 2,000 yards. You hope that, and Najee won't get that high because he's got Warren behind him. But I could see similar success. Now, is Pickens going to be their A.J. Brown, right?
Yeah.
Brown has that size to run over the middle. Now he gets the ball, and he's like a running back at 230 pounds. Pickens is a little bit leaner. Pickens, does he create as much separation? I mean, he's only going to get better. Me personally, I don't want to get down that road, but I would look the way I view salary cap structure. I would look to move him now and try to build the offensive and defensive line. I want to win through the line of scrimmage. But if they get a center with Najee Harris to get downhill, one of those two kids, maybe Zach Frazier from West Virginia or the kid from Oregon, Jackson, 3 names. Shoot, it's just like Joey Porter. It's the same initials, but like you get that inside caving in, and they're very difficult to stop all of a sudden.
Now, it's interesting you say that. I'm glad you brought up Kenny Pickens because I think right now Steeler Nation is kind of in a quandary in terms of how they're looking at the quarterback position. I think there's, in my opinion, a little bit of recency bias there because the quarterback position, the quality of it has been up and down since Big Ben's retirement. And even in Big Ben's last few years, quarterback play still was marginal.
Yeah.
He was really operating as
Yeah.
as
He
a
couldn't move.
physically compromised player.
Yep.
And so to a certain extent, I think Steeler Nation, their expectation around the quarterback position is low, very low. Describe to me, or do you agree with this question or statement? Does Arthur Smith's offense make it easy for the quarterback to operate and see a clear picture consistently when they're playing? Because I think a lot of concern that I've heard from people on my show is Kenny can't read the field. Kenny is having problems with accuracy. Kenny plays like a player who's kind of stuck.
I mean, we'll find out, right? Because Marcus Mariota didn't have success, and then they replaced him with Tannehill, and Tannehill flourished. So this allows you to find out about Kenny and what can he be a Tannehill, maybe even a little bit better, because I think he might be a little bit more mentally resilient, let's say, than Tannehill. But I mean, I think the thing about Kenny, he can be average, and average can win you championships, and he might be able to get you top 10. Here's what I see that I like. He doesn't turn the ball over much. I know I'm not talking about necessarily the afraid to throw over the middle, and I don't even think that was the issue, but he doesn't fumble. He didn't fumble one time. He had 2 fumbles last year, one reaching the ball out of bounds and 2 on a snap that Mason Cole, was on, and he bobbled it a little bit, and that was his 2 fumbles. So he doesn't take hits in the pocket where he fumbles. And then so he protects the ball, because those quarterbacks that just throw 2 or 3 balls a game that you're saying, what are you doing? And you're throwing it to
Yeah,
the other
yeah.
team, and you're a backup. And he's not that. And he's only in year 2. And then he's clutch at the end of games, to come back in some of those games. And some of them are pressure games. I mean, you want to win the Franco Harris game, and he did that. And it was cold, and he's cutting through that cold weather. And then here's what I saw last year. Second play of the game against Arizona. He gets under center, 2nd and 2, runs play action, throws a 38-yard dart in stride to Pickens. He can throw the play action, the ball. Then against the Raiders, same thing. They finally run a play action over the middle. He hits it, and then they run it. They stay balanced. He hits a play action again to Freiermuth for a touchdown, and you say, all right, he can do that. And then last year, when they went 7 and 2, he's 50% on third downs when they got under center, and they limited his reads. Okay. Yes, because he gets skittish. You put him in the gun, and now the game starts scrambling, and now he starts running left instead of staying in the pocket. But if you lead with the run, lead with play action, what does San Francisco do? Ask their quarterback to make 5 to 7 difficult throws a game. And then now you get them in third down, and then here's your third down package, buddy. And this is what you expect to see out of this defense. And we're going to run this on third down. And then you simplify it for him on 2-minute drills and third downs. And then I think he can grow organically. I do. He's young, but he's not. Everybody thinks that, Stroud comes in or Ben comes in and everybody's got to be it day one. It doesn't work that
No,
way. Look at
yeah.
Jordan Love, So it takes time sometimes, and I'm willing to give that kid time because of some of the things that he's already shown us. Which
Here's
is,
the thing that
yeah.
I've said on the show, and I've been ripped for this because I've had a lot of fans talk about Mason Rudolph being the bridge guy.
Mhm.
And I've made jokes that a bridge to where, like a bridge, you got to get a bridge connects 2 points. I don't know where this bridge is taking me. It's a
Mhm.
bridge to no return. Like, because when I look at it, I'm saying, okay, they've had Mason Rudolph for almost 5 seasons. You know what you have. It's not impossible that someone, a quality professional, can have a good streak. You can get into a rhythm. You can play a couple of good games and have a good streak. But now And I think it really happens in Steeler Nation because of where the quarterback play has been. Those 3 games, I think they've been taken to the point where he's the next Joe Burrow. Like he's our next guy. He's our bridge guy. He's going to get us to. My perspective is this: they know what he is, and they drafted a guy in the first round. They signed another guy in Mitch Trubisky. If they wanted to have him as their guy, bridge guy, he could have been. They tried to do that, and they chose to move forward with Kenny Pickett. So I'm saying, why not put Kenny in a better scheme
Mm-hmm.
to help support whatever he is and figure out what he is? Instead of, in my opinion, it would be taking a step back, starting Mason, and starting this whole process over. Why don't you see ultimately what you have in Kenny Pickett as a player? Do I sound crazy?
No, I think that's a lot of what they're going to do. But let's briefly talk about Mason because, or we'll talk about however we want to talk about him. But like,
Yes.
I like Mason, and do I think he's a superstar? No, but even back in 2019, I was making that, hey, if you bring this guy along the right way, maybe he could be another Kirk Cousins type dude. And he was stuck in the worst offense in football. That offense that is the Ben Roethlisberger dink. I can't move. Let me get it out quick. No play action. They're dead last in play action. They're dead last in. It's awful. It was a hard watch for years. And even with Ben, I just knew they were pretenders. And so, but Mason needed that play action game. He needed that support. And what was it, 2019 or 20, when he had that 315-yard game against Cleveland, and he hits Deontay on a ball down the sideline as he's getting hit 30 on the money, 35 yards down the
Yeah.
field, and he hits the long ball to Deontay at the end of the game, and he throws a beautiful deep ball. I'm thinking, what numbers can he put up if he has a play action game and he has a running game to support him? I mean, of course, he looked, some mediocre against the Lions in the rain, and you worry about certain weather conditions, and you definitely worry about, all right, is he going to hold that ball too long? And now he's a little bit statuesque and he can't get out of the pocket. And now he fumbles. And we saw some of that, even though it was bad weather in Baltimore. I do worry about the turnovers a little bit when it comes to Mason. But I think if you bring Mason back, competition makes us better. And so I think ultimately he knows they probably, unless he's way better somehow than Pickett, that he probably is the backup, and you structure a 2-year contract where you say, all right, this is your starting money, but if you're the backup, this is what you get. And, they're going to have to work that out and figure it out. I think he could go to Atlanta where Zach Robinson is, and that would be a better opportunity maybe for him. But let me ask you this too, Lance. What about Tannehill? If he comes in, I don't feel comfortable with that either. Reason being is he already knows the system. So he's going to look a lot better than Pickett in August as Pickett's learning and trying to, it's a new system for everybody.
Right.
You got the guy that already knows it. And now week 1, you start Pickett, and then you have maybe the locker room saying, he shouldn't be starting. I mean, between the two, I think Mason is like more of a culture fit than maybe even Tannehill.
And I'm getting and big up to Corey Hatcher. Corey Hatcher is a coach, and he's saying, please no Tannehill. This is why I think I would go the Tannehill route instead of the Mason route, because already on record, you have Deontay Johnson and others already saying they want Mason Rudolph to be the starter. And
Deontay needs to go, but yeah, I see what you're saying.
so I'm terrible at cliches, but I feel like it's the divided house cliche I'm trying to
Yeah,
think of, but I'm terrible with cliches. I
yeah,
feel like that pressure of guys in your locker room that have already planted their flag with Mason Rudolph, that just makes it kind of weird could make it weird in terms of the competition. I
Sure.
like the case of put your eggs in the Pickett basket,
Yeah.
bring in Tannehill with the understanding, have the frank conversation. This is
Right.
Kenny's team,
Right.
and try to build it from there and see
Right.
what you have.
Right. No, that makes total sense too, because then you give Tannehill a backup quarterback contract where you don't
He's
have it
Mitch.
2-tiered, like you would with Mason, where, all right. So that's a conundrum. That's something that, the organization, I'm sure, is going to have conversations on too, right? And
Yeah,
I I can see the positives and negatives almost to both sides of that equation. It's interesting.
yeah. I mean, when I think about the negative, I think about is you're in the AFC North with Lamar Jackson and Joe Burrow. I don't, whether it's Tannehill, Pickett, whether it's Pickett, Mason Rudolph, neither quarterback room. You can add them all up, and they're not Burrow and Lamar Jackson. Like that is the ultimate issue. But let me ask you this on Kenny Pickett, and,
Mhm.
and where do you stand? Because over the last few weeks, I've been doing a bunch of shorts on Kenny Pickett. I've been called Kenny Pickett's biggest fan, and I don't have a dog in this fight at all.
Right.
And I came up with three things to describe where I think Steeler Nation is with Kenny Pickett. One, you got some people that are like, hell yeah, he's the guy. You got some people that's, he's mid. And you got some people that say, he's not it, man. He's not the guy. Where are you if I were to give you these three in terms of Kenny Pickett?
He's mid. Maybe I think he can elevate to slightly above that, but mid. Jimmy Garoppolo was knocking on the doorstep of a Super Bowl, and if Mahomes doesn't make an incredible 3rd and 13 throw, he's a champion. And the right guard that was getting killed by Chris Jones, if they would have had somebody adequate, they win that too. I just think that Kenny could grow into. I think his ceiling could be top 8 to 10. He's not going to be an elite quarterback. He just doesn't have. But to me, he doesn't have like the elite skills or arm strength or anything like that. He's not overly dynamic athletically, but he's a very good athlete. He can throw on the run, go to his right or left. He's tough. Like I said, he protects the ball. So I think to me, he's the perfect system quarterback. And that's really what I've wanted for a long time because it's been a hard watching the Steelers play the last 10, 15 years. I'll be honest with you. Like I've been watching it and I've been writing about it saying this isn't going to work. And I've been pretty detached with just letting it play out and knowing that this is not a championship. Even when they started off 11-0, I'm like, they're going to lose in the first round. And you could see it dipping because they're just not balanced. We know what that looks like, man. In
Right.
2004 and 2005 taught me a hell of a lot. I know what 26-4, I know what a running game with an elite quarterback looks like. I don't understand why everybody doesn't do it, unless you don't have Patrick Mahomes. I don't get it. Like Josh Allen would flourish with a play action and run 50-50 type deal. And, it just makes your whole team better. It's the ultimate team game. So I think with Kenny, you don't get enamored, and they were already for a year or two. They're trying to make him throw it way more than he should be. But hopefully they learn that, hey, like we can't get enamored with him in the passing game. We got to lead run first. And now you got a guy who's mobile, who can step up and you make some plays with his legs, make some throws on the run. He protects the ball. And I think that could put him on a very good path with him. So I'm definitely mid on that. But
Yeah, I
mid
think
with
I'm yeah, I think I'm with you. I think I'm mid because he's not a high traits. He's not a high level physical traits guy. However, he's not a low traits guy either. He's kind
right.
of just, and as Corey would describe him, he's kind of mid. He's a mid traits guy. He runs, he kind of gets out of the pocket okay. Like he doesn't do anything particularly well, but I think, like you're saying, is we've mixed up as fans, I think, game manager. If you put him in a scheme that is friendly, that is quarterback friendly, that allows him to build confidence. I think
Absolutely.
what he showed in the fourth quarter
Yep.
makes you say, okay, if we can get him confident,
Yeah.
he has the ability to play in big spots. Before we get out of here,
Yeah. Yeah.
everybody, you've been listening to The New Standard with my friend Matt Steele. And let me give you some over-unders before we get out of here.
Yeah.
Give me some over-unders on the following numbers.
Yep.
In the first year of Arthur Smith's system, the Steelers will average over 23 points a game or under.
I'm gonna say over.
Okay.
I'm gonna say over. I don't know if that's wishful thinking, but I have some confidence going into next year. I do. You know, I would be surprised if Kenny doesn't take that next step and maybe has a passer rating in the 90s. And Najee's getting downhill, and so is Warren. And then we got a play action game. It might take a little bit of time, but I think definitely by the second half of the year, I expect to see that.
Let me
Whether it's
get
overall, hey, we'll see.
let me give you this number.
Hmm.
Pickett, 4,000 yards passing.
Under.
Under. Okay. Pickens, 1,200 yards receiving.
I almost hope that it's under because I don't want to be
Okay.
throwing the ball too much. Like I
Najee,
wanted about 50-50. You know what though? This offense would be better for him. I'm going to say over.
let's say Najee, 1,200 yards rushing.
How much do they use Warren? You're pretty close on these numbers, by the way, my friend. Like
That's
I would say over, but not much because Warren is there.
let's
But
see.
if he
Yeah,
let me just
yeah.
say this about it. If he can get 1,000 yards with what they were doing before, then I see 1,200 in this system without a doubt. As long as he stays healthy.
How about yards per carry as a team? 4.5.
Yeah, you're right on the money with that one. That's exactly what I would guess it to be. So let's go. You know what? I'm gonna say under, even though I think it might be over, because here's why. It is about the attempts and not necessarily the yards per carry. And some of those yards per carry is inflated when you're in the shotgun and teams got 6 in the box, and then you get a weak 7 or 8 yards. It really doesn't open up things down the field. And if they stay under center and they're grinding it out at the end of games, maybe it's at 4.3, but it's still a winning 4.3.
Right,
So
right.
yeah.
Oh, let me pop this one in here
Hmm.
from Corey Hatcher. Warren and Harris, a combined 2K.
Yes. As long as they stay healthy, I think what they had 1,800 this year and they didn't even have a play action game. So, and then I think the line is going to get better. I'm going to say over on that one.
And the last one I want to ask you, Steelers win a playoff game this year.
Ooh. Yeah, if this is what I've been asking for I don't know how many years, and we're finally, I think, getting it. If they give us the Atlanta version of Smith, I'm gonna be pulling my hair out again, So, but if it's what I'm thinking it is, absolutely, I think this can be done. And I'll say yes because I mean they've been knocking on the door anyway. Mike Tomlin gets his teams ready to play, and they play hard for him, and they got some really good pieces along the defense. I think they'll just to keep it short because I could talk about this for 10 minutes. I'll say yes, they're going to get one.
I
Yeah.
think Steeler Nation would be happy with one because it's been a while. It's been a while since 2016, and I'm pleased. Let me ask you another one.
Yeah.
While I got you one, let me jump into Dennis writes, Pat Fryermuth over or under 7 touchdowns.
That's a good question. They should utilize him more in the middle of the field and in the red zone. How many touchdown passes if he's going to get if you're running it down their throat and they can't stop it. I'm gonna still say under. That's a lot for a tight end.
Yeah, I'm going to say under as well. Let me ask
Yeah,
you one last one when it comes
yeah,
to touchdown passes. Kenny Pickett, 17 touchdown passes, plus or minus.
over.
Over. Okay. Because touchdown passes are, I went to 17 because touchdown passes are kind of on the downside over the last few years. I didn't want to put it at 20 and
No,
put
I
too
get
much
it.
pressure.
Yeah, I know. And the thing is, man, the question I have is how close can he get to 100 passer rating, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, all right, if you average 8 yards a pass attempt and you have 3 touchdown passes and 1 interception, let's say you combine that over the course of 2 weeks, it's right around 100, And in this system where Tannehill averaged 9.6 the first year and about I think it was
Yeah.
8 yards a pass attempt the second year, and he had 33 touchdowns and 7 interceptions year 2. Okay, if Kenny can do 25 touchdowns and 24-6 or something like that, some type of ratio like that, I think it's doable in that system because I've been watching a lot of highlights of that and some breakdowns, and man, there's some guys running wide open. So I
It's
think he
going to
takes
be
that step.
interesting.
Yeah,
I am pleasantly surprised and happy that they went outside the building. I think that's the first good sign.
yeah,
Um,
huge.
just hearing about them potentially wanting to sign a passing game coordinator, how real that is,
Mm-hmm.
maybe expanding the staff. I think those are all good signs because I think they see, and it's indicative that I think they're realizing their approach needs some tweaking.
Yep, absolutely.
That it needs some tweaking. Not to say that they're saying it's completely stale, but they're saying there's some we need to fine tune this a bit.
Well, I like the direction that they went with the interviews that they had, even though it seemed like the guys that they wanted, they went with that system, that McVay, Shanahan tree system. I remember you asked me a while back, you said, why no Bieniemy? I'm like, well, they're standing in the gun, chucking it around, and Sam
Right.
Howell's taking over 60 sacks, and I don't want to see that anymore. They got to run first, run play action, and they went in that direction. And in every single other hire from an offensive coordinator standpoint from other teams, I'm so thankful. Did you imagine? I mean, Ken Dorsey in Cleveland, what are they doing? So there was just so many bad hires that I thought like this was the best scenario to work out for us.
And I like the head coaching aspect too. I'm not sure how that will work itself out, but I don't think it's bad to have another guy in the
It's
building
beautiful.
with head coaching experience
Yeah,
who firmly knows what his role is. He knows he's not the head coach,
right.
but he can help the head coach with certain things if the head
Absolutely.
coach needs some head coaching
Well,
type things help.
yeah, and that reminds me of your point earlier when you said about Arthur Smith being a head coach instead of an OC, and some guys are better OCs. Think about it this way, and I think Chris Long was talking about that on his podcast. He said, I don't know how these guys can do both because there's so many responsibilities for a head coach from flight responsibilities, and you're booking all this and you have these different meetings and this and away from football, and you got to do the offense on top of it. So when it comes to Atlanta, and I think, well, Dave Ragone was the offensive coordinator and Arthur Smith was calling plays. Is it possible that Ragone was primarily designing the game plan and Arthur Smith is calling the plays from there? And that's why we saw such a difference
Yeah.
from what we saw in Tennessee. I'm hoping that's the case. Hey, look at Dick LeBeau, 2-14 as a head coach. He comes back to coordinating and he's the man, so
Yeah, it's definitely a different skill set. But
right.
we're gonna go ahead and wrap this up. Thank you, Maddie Steele, aka Maddie Cecil.
It
Uh,
was a pleasure, Lance. I appreciate
thank
it,
you
man.
for
That was
getting us
fun.
on. Hopefully, we're gonna try to get you on during the year as well.
Yeah, I'd love to.
That's if hopefully that Mason Rudolph does not start, because I have said If Mason Rudolph starts, that's the end of my podcast. I'm done. I've already said it. I'm done.
That's
I'll just
that's
watch from
hilarious.
afar. I'll
That's
just watch.
hilarious.
I'm done. I'll just watch from afar. I suffered through too much of this, and Cliff Stoughton and Kent Graham and all these
Yeah,
other guys. I
yeah,
can't take it anymore. I'm getting a little bit too old.
yeah.
That I'm just going to exit stage right. But thank you. I want to get you on definitely as this starts to unfold and we start to see some of these moves. I definitely want to get you on probably around preseason as we might see some of the offense, a little bit of the guts
Yeah.
of the offense, and see what it's looking like. David Woodley, that's a name. That was terrible.
Oh boy. Yeah.
That was
Yeah.
Bubby Brister.
Yeah. Mark
That was bad.
Malone.
Yeah,
I
Mark
saw all that.
Malone, like,
Hmm.
yee. Like, I've seen
Hmm.
some bad ones. But thank you for hopping on the show. We're going to get you back on. Want to
Thanks for
thank you
having me.
once again.
Yeah.
Enjoy the rest of your day, and we'll be reaching out to you.
Pardon me.
And we'll be reaching back out to you to get you back
Oh,
on. Thank
sounds
you.
fantastic, Lance. I had a blast talking Steeler football with you. So happy to do it.
All right. All right. Thank you, sir. Thank you, listeners, for tuning in to a special Sunday live edition. And that was fantastic. And we're going to go ahead and get out of here. And as always, tune in, tell a friend, and subscribe.